Welcome to Straight Up Reviews, where there's no bullshit beyond the sign. Well, it finally happened. After months, I finally got to watch Man of Steel, the movie that fans of all mediums are split between. Some say it's the best Superman flick ever made. Others say it's ruined everything Superman had to stand for. Now, this is going to be a long one, since it covers many aspects both people love and hate. Spoilers ahead. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, here's the brief summary. Fresh off the Dark Knight saga, Christopher Nolan teams up with Zack Snyder of 300 and Watchmen fame to retell the story of Superman. In this case, Superman is just starting out. After discovering and adapting to his powers, he wanders the Earth to find his place in the world. During his journey, he discovers what he is and why he was sent to Earth. However, not everything is sunshines and rainbows, as General Zod and his followers escape from the Phantom Zone in an attempt to find the means to transform Earth into a brand new Krypton, which in turn could destroy all humanity. Now, with that out of the way, unlike my previous ones, this straight up will cover all bases, from the acting to the story elements to the settings to the effects to the choice of filmmakers. First is the acting choices. I'm going to start with the actors I do know, and move down to the ones I don't know at the time. Russell Crowe as Jor-El. I admit when I first heard about this, I felt this was the casting choice I didn't agree with. Not because Crowe is a bad actor, don't get me wrong, he's a good actor. But two factors came into question, at least before I saw the role. One thing was I thought he was well suited to play Zod, mostly because he played villains before and he literally has a beard for it, as well as the fact that I always wanted to hear him shout "Kneel" before Zod. The other is the more obvious. Before Crowe in the live-action elements, we've only seen Marlon Brando play the role. When Brando played the role, he was great at playing the stoic, having a calm demeanor even in the face of danger, rarely showing emotion, but showing that in his most vulnerable moments he's holding back tears, as proven in the scene where he says his goodbyes to Kal-El. It was a tough act to follow, and even the greatest of actors. However, I changed my mind when I did see Crowe in action. He was able to show emotion rather than simply hold it back during his facial expressions, while at the same time, in his tone of voice, remained stoic, unless certain events became a concern. Plus, he was the only Jor-El to show both the intelligent and tough, even when fighting Zod, a natural-born soldier only because his son was in danger. Kevin Costner and Diane Lane as Jonathan and Martha Kent. Now, I know many people are so-so on Costner, but I agree with this role. If it's one thing Costner is good at least to me, it's playing a father figure. Field of Dreams and Untouchable show that his acting is the most emotional when he's playing a concerned parent. As for Diane Lane, she's been caught in the middle of the Greaser Social War in her heyday. She can take on being Superman's mom. Though it's kind of ironic they got the actors who played the remake of Marlon Brando's wife from A Streetcar to play this role. Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. This role was another I disagreed with because Lawrence, while the expert at playing tough guys, from a hospital orderly in Freddy Krueger films to Morpheus, I felt that some energy and quirkiness that Jackie Cooper put in the Donner film was lacking in Fishburne's role. He has yet to say "Don't call me Chief," but it grew on me once he made up for it by showing a more heroic side, such as helping Metropolis citizens get to safety. Christopher Meloni as Colonel Hardy. Okay, before I say my piece on him, I gotta say it. This is as close to a Law and Order CSI crossover as anyone gonna get. That being said, I'm surprised they got Stabler to play not just an army soldier, but one that teams up with Superman. He does his classic snarkiness when interacting with characters such as Lois Lane, but is an all-around reasonable figure of authority. Only going against Superman when he feels he's a threat, but helping him out when he knows he isn't. And he doesn't back down, not even against Farah. Harry Lennox says General Swanwick. Okay, is there a secret Matrix unit I don't know about? Back on track. There wasn't much to say about him, since he rarely shows up in the movie, but he's easy to sympathize with. Earth specifically, USA is in danger. All he's doing is what he thinks is in their interests. So when he turns Superman over, it's hard not to blame him, no matter how dickish a move it was. Ayelet Zura as Lara. I admit she's one of the actresses I've never heard of, but she's going places. As Lara, she's portrayed as both a concerned mother, shown when, despite Krypton blowing up around her, all she wanted to do was see her son one last time, to a stoic, somewhat nihilist person in the end, which is understandable since she lost her husband, she'll never see her son again, and her planet's going up in flames, so she's got nothing to lose. Anya Trow as Farah. First, I would like to apologize if I didn't get that name or the earlier name right. That said, I think her role is summed up to be one thing: the complete opposite of Lara. Where Lara, like her husband Jor-El, has morals, Farah doesn't. which makes her the perfect villain. My only regret is they didn't face off, but the planet was exploding, so not everyone on Krypton is focused on fighting. Michael Shannon as Zod. I admit I'd never seen his roles prior to this. Much like other characters in a live-action setting, Zod was a tough act to follow. The way Shannon portrayed him was one of the most sympathetic, while at the same time most hated characters. He killed without remorse, but he wants his home back. He is deeply hurt when he has to fight his own friend, but ends up killing him regardless. And he's a man of his word too. He said he would find Kal-El, and he did. And rather than attack him head-on, he tried to solve the problem peacefully, offered him a chance to join his race once again, despite calling his birth a heresy. When negotiations failed, they went to war. Amy Adams is Lois Lane, another actress that is unknown to me. This one was a tough act to follow, both in combination of topping off Margot Kidder, as well as today's world, someone like Lois Lane would be hard to portray in media. In stories since before the 30s, it's considered a natural gag in action medias for the male hero to rescue the helpless female captive. However, in today's world, it's considered sexist even in the best of stories, because not all females, both real and fiction, are helpless. In fact, even at the times these stories took place, they have held their own as good as, if not better than males. Joan of Arc, for example, would have led to French victory if she wasn't captured in 1430. That said, Adams pulled it off with flying colors. Much like Kidder, she is not all the way helpless unless something was too big for her to handle. In this case, aliens that are vulnerable to basic attacks, like shooting or punching, or falling near terminal velocity, only needing Superman for those times. Last, we have Henry Cavill as Superman. This was an even tougher act to follow because not only was he topping off Reeve, he was topping off every single actor that's ever portrayed the Man of Steel, both good and bad. He had to either aspire to be better or do his own thing. It was even tougher because he not only had to play one role, but three. The first being Clark Kent, who, with the exception of people closer to him, everyone sees him as an oddball or someone they wouldn't associate himself with, making him invisible to Metropolis. The other being Joe the Drifter, who is an empty shell of a man trying to find his place in the world, as well as helping those that need help. Last but not least is Kal-El, or Superman as the public calls him. He finally finds his place and no longer has to hide in the shadows to help others. He's still conflicted on who to trust, but nonetheless tries to help everyone in any way he can, while living up to both his upbringings. Much of the story has many controversies among fans, both pro and anti, and I shall cover them all. The first is the most obvious. Jonathan Kent saying maybe Clark should have let the kids he rescued die. Many people consider this a bad message to instill, however I feel you guys overlook something. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no, he said maybe. Now this can be interpreted in many ways, but I think he was implying was to find a way to save them without having them see him. Since he was a kid at the time, he didn't anticipate that anyone would be watching his heroism, let alone tell anyone. Whereas when he was being Joe the Drifter, he was only being seen by the people he rescued, rather than put on a show for any surrounding witnesses, even making it look like he perished in the acts. When he donned the suit for the first time, he had finally found a way of showing his true self while keeping his life as Clark Kent a secret. That was the maybe. The second element was why Superman told Zod how to control his power on Earth. This reaches as far back as the comics. One of many Superman's character traits was that if a fight was inevitable, he would want to beat his opponent at his best, to demoralize them when they do lose. In other words, he wanted to fight Zod fairly. The third being Lois knowing Superman's identity too early. This one, while I do disagree on, but at the same time wouldn't blame them. Lois is not that stupid in any incarnation, but a running gag in most mediums is that she is usually the last to know who Superman really is. However, it's inevitable that she would find out anyway, so why waste time tap dancing around it like it's the Kryptonian elephant in the room? Seriously, there's Kryptonian elephants. The fourth being the obvious religious symbolism. Now I'm going to stop you fans who don't like the symbolism right there. There's always going to be that symbolism in the comics. The original creators, Shuster and Siegel, are Jewish. They base Superman's arrival off of Exodus, and Superman is practically an alien equivalent to gods. Much like a certain Norse god who shall remain nameless, yet the same fans do not complain about. It's not really hurting anybody, so shut up and leave it alone. The final most controversial one was debated since it came out. Superman killing General Zod. Yeah, here's the thing. Unlike Batman, who doesn't kill, Superman has killed, but only as a last resort. Many mediums before this movie, while trying to find a solution that doesn't involve murder, would often have him kill someone when there was no choice. In the case of Zod, he vowed never to stop unless every human on Earth was dead, as a means to make Kal-El suffer. When there was no other way to stop him, he delivered the coup de grace, an action that clearly haunted him, and something he may never want to do again. Not to mention the fact that the Christopher Reeve era Superman killed Zod in Superman 2. The overall settings is the best part of the series. Krypton itself, moments before its destruction, showed a combo between medieval way of life mixed with futuristic technology. The animals are what to expect on an alien world, strange, but still animals nonetheless. The effects are arguably the most realistic you could ever put in a comic book movie, using a mix of real-life shots with only a few CGI. The flying effects, for example, rather than make Superman CGI or the background CGI, they film most of the background flights in real settings such as the farms and Metropolis, saving the CGI for the more complicated scenes such as the space flight and destruction scenes. As for the crew itself, we have Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan, and David Goyer as the brains of the entire operation. Each one has their own unique styles. Before they came together, Snyder was more or less a show-don't-tell style of filmmaking, relying on visuals to tell a story rather than the dialogue and plot elements. He also ups the ante by being one of the few filmmakers who can copy an exact moment from a comic book and bring it to life on the big screen, as proven with 300, which is literally copied panel by panel. Nolan, on the other hand, is a tell-don't-show kind of guy. He believes that story elements always overshadow the visuals, as proven when most of his stronger scenes in the Nolan Batman trilogy are the dialogue rather than the action. Put them in the world of comics, and you have the writer and artist respectively. If Nolan is the Kubrick of the comic movies, then Snyder is the Spielberg. Then we have David Goyer, who is no stranger to the comics and comic book movies, as he was both the writer and the director of the Blade trilogy, which had its own ups and downs, but still overall good trilogy nonetheless. Overall, Man of Steel is not the best Superman movie, no. It's the best ever comic book movie ever written, as it's everything you could want in a comic book movie. And for those complaining about Ben Affleck being Batman, I have this to say. It's not his fault Daredevil bombed, but he didn't improve it. If he could play George Reeves, a role that pretty much brought him back on the spotlight, why can't he play Batman as good as Superman's actor? And finally, you guys said the same thing about Michael Keaton, and look what happened. As usual, debate, argue, and let me know what I missed. Stay tuned for more.